Good morning, brand DIYers. It is a beautiful Monday morning here in Victoria. I hope you had a great weekend, and I hope that all your Christmas preparations are going well. Things are moving along pretty good here. It's kind of a weird year for all of us, not celebrating Christmas quite the way we used to. But hey, adapt and prosper. I have a very interesting topic to talk to you about. One of my favorite topics, actually. I love what I do. I love working in advertising and brands. But the deeper love is people. I love working with people and trying to understand what's going on in people's minds because what I've discovered is that there's always some weird new quirk in people's minds that I don't understand. And that is what makes this job so fun, trying to understand what makes people tick. And if you give yourself over to the idea that people are strange and what they say is not what they do, and what they do one time is not what they do all times, you can have a lot of fun doing this, and it keeps us busy forever. We never run out of things to do if we're working with people. So that brings me to the topic. I read an interview in this great book. It's called Brand Thinking by Debbie Millman. And in it, she interviews a whole bunch of brand leaders and titans of the industry, people who most of us know. If we don't know them, we know their work. And she was in conversation with Wally Olins, who is one of the legends of the design world and co-founder of Wolf Olins in the UK. And it was interesting. She talked to Mr. Olins about a number of things, but the last topic was what would he like to do as his crowning achievement? And I thought it was a bit surprising what he said. He said he wanted to help the European Union get its brand in order. And I think today, more than pretty much any other time, the European Union is kind of in disarray. Countries with autocratic type leaders are threatening to leave, and it's this infection from this our country first, America first, America now. You're seeing that in countries like Italy, and they're pulling apart. You're seeing it, most pronounced in the UK with Brexit. It's all about the UK, and they're pulling apart the European Union. And Wally Olin said that his crowning achievement, if he had the chance, would be to help the EU get its brand in order. And he explained, he said, the EU should be a brand of unity. That's what it was founded on, the whole idea of one common union to rebuff aggressors and make themselves stronger and better by being one. However, this is a pretty tall task because the history of Europe is one of people and countries that were often at war with each other, that hated each other, that at the very least felt superior to one another. So how can you turn that into a brand of unity? Now, examples like this are everywhere. Look at the United States. Right now, the United States is encountering this terribly toxic environment of partisanship. People actually hate each other. It's not like the two political parties where they say, hey, I lost this, you're my opponent, but we can get along and we can come to a better agreement. They're saying you are the enemy. We must crush you. The language is staggering, and the psychology is staggering, how people have grown apart so they actually hate a person who might hold a different sort of worldview than they do. So how can Joe Biden possibly come to a common understanding with all the folks in the United States that will pull the brand out of the dumpster fire and get everybody on the same team again? So now let's take a look at your brand. Who is your audience? Now, I'm pretty sure that you have at least a fuzzy idea of the sort of person who walks into the shop and buys your product. or comes online and buys your product. You probably check them out. They probably have to answer a few questions. You see that it's 35-year-old working women, or 65-year-old retired gentlemen, or 18-year-old students at university. But if you did a bit of online tracking, you might actually find something that's surprising, if not a bit alarming. Let me give you an example. One of my clients makes racing parts for race cars. I was in a conversation just the other day with a very smart dude. His name is Grant Higginson, and he's actually a brand DIY member, and he's a genius at SEO. And Grant does the SEO for this client. In fact, he introduced us. So he shocked me when he told me that he had been looking at the numbers and the patterns and saw that women were actually a disproportionately large part of the audience. They weren't the core audience, but they were there. And a lot of them, we're talking to the tune of 20% of the audience, was women. Now, this completely shocked me. My client had known about this, but it was one of those things where we said, well, who are we going to focus on? I had no idea, though. I mean, it goes to show you, every day be prepared to be surprised. Now, why was I surprised? Because I had fallen into one of the fundamental traps of building brands and doing marketing, that I looked at a demographic and not a psychographic. Let me explain the difference. A demographic talks about the things that you can see. The sex of a person. All men buy car racing parts. Women do not. That's sex. Age. These car parts are for people who can afford them. Men who are about 45 years old. That's a demographic. Financial status. How well off you are. Are you married? Are you not married? Where do you live? All those sort of things that we can easily put a pin in are demographics. And sometimes they're useful, even though personally, I believe that they're more misleading than indicative and directive. The other graphic that you can look at is psychographics. And this is where things get really good. Psychographics talks about how people think. Now, I just talked about the United States and the brand of partisanship and how different people can actually be. Now, if you look at the psychographics of the United States, you'd go, well, if you are young and educated, you will probably be more liberal. Then let's look at Ivanka Trump, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Two fairly young women, both well educated, at complete polar opposite ends of the spectrum, psychographically. So a lot of times, the person that you're trying to market to and speak to could be a young person and an old person, a person of color and a white person, a liberal person and a conservative person. They might all be in your target audience. How do you get to these people? You have to get to what is alike in these people. That is the topic of this conversation. Your audience might surprise you and might make you scratch your heads and might make you go, these folks don't at all look alike, but they might think alike. Let me illustrate with an example from my own past. One of my jobs when I worked in big advertising was to bring two big brands together, two brands of mutual funds. The one brand was AIM. The other brand was Trimark. These two brands did not get along. They hated each other. AIM thought that Trimark were a bunch of choir boys. Trimark thought that AIM were a bunch of cowboys and irresponsible. It was our job to bring these two groups together. So what could we do? Well, the first thing that we did, we talked to the opinion leaders at each of the organizations, and those were the fund managers. These were the guys wearing the big diamond-studded cufflinks and the fancy suits, the guys who were responsible for handling millions, if not billions of dollars in their portfolio. And we did interviews with the AIM fund managers and with the Trimark fund managers. And what we discovered, that on the surface, they hated each other. Yes, they had fundamentally different perspectives on how to invest. However, as we spoke with them, what we unearthed was that they had one very, very strong shared belief. And this shared belief actually overrode everything else. That shared belief was that each of these fund managers thought that they were the only ones in the organization who did their homework properly, who investigated an investment properly before plonking down a whole bunch of money in that investment. Not only did they think that they were the only ones, it went further. They thought all of the other fund managers weren't doing their job properly. I am the only one doing my homework properly, and they are asleep at the wheel. So what did we do? We used that foundational belief as the core of our branding, and we turned that into the famous campaign, Knowing Pays, which rocketed AIM Trimark in their first year to the top of the Canadian mutual fund charts. Knowing Pays. We do our homework so you make more money. When we reflected this campaign back to the clients, they all looked at it and said, how did you ever come up with that? That's absolutely genius. And we had a little bit of laugh off by ourselves thinking, well, you guys basically told us all of this. So oftentimes, if you have clients or customers who look completely different, it might be because you're looking at what's obvious, their skin color, their marital status, their age. You need to dig a little bit deeper, and what you will probably find is that there's a foundational belief that they share that is far stronger than their demographic, their age, sex, marital status, financial status. There is a core psychological thing that ties them all together that could propel your brand and make it much more interesting and make it appeal to a far larger audience. And that is all I got to say. Now, I see that I got a couple of guests here sounding off. Ryan, morning. Looking good on this Monday. Jesus, thank you. I dress like I have to dress like a grown-up today. And Barbara, thanks for joining us. She says, I just need every uninspired, smelly person who needs a shower with a hippo soap. Yeah, I think that's a very good thing. Everyone who is smelly, you know that that's not your audience. And yeah, she leaves them smelling better. I think that your audience goes far deeper than that. However, we can talk about that another time. At any rate, if you know somebody who needs this kind of insight, make sure to tell them to join the branddiygroup.com. We're up to 490 members. Wouldn't it be cool if we got to 500 members by Christmas? I hope that you all have a terrific day. Don't let the Christmas pressure get to you. And we'll see you tomorrow with our expert guest.